Today's story is about the youngest serial killer in Morocco. His name is Ayman. Ayman, God keep you safe, was 17 years old. It's 2014. He's still in high school, but it's summer break and he's out there trying to make some money, looking for any kind of work he can find. Summer's always a good time for that. Restaurants, cafes, fast food spots, something's always hiring. Someone told him, "Go to Tawnat. There's a job opening at a cafe out there." Ayman is originally from the north of Morocco, from a city called Martin. But that summer, he packed up and went to Tawnat. He showed up at the cafe and they hired him as a waiter. Small job, taking orders, running tables, nothing fancy. His whole goal was to save as much money as he could before the next school year started, because his family was poor and he had to take care of himself. But the summer was almost over and he had barely saved anything. The cafe wasn't paying him much at all. So he decided to try something else. He became a roasted corn seller. He'd buy corn from the market, the vegetable market, set up a little cart with charcoal and roast it right there on the street. You know the type of setup, the kind I showed you in the video. He'd stand out on the street and sell to whoever walked by. Honestly, it was better money than the cafe. Faster too, but even so, it was only going to last another 20-25 days before summer ended, and whatever he made still wasn't going to be enough. Not enough to last him through the next school year. He sat there and thought about it. Really thought about it. And then he made a decision. He was going to steal, but he was going to do it smart, in a way that nobody would ever trace back to him. And the longer he sat there selling corn on that street, the more he started paying attention to the people walking by, watching them, learning them. One man walked up and bought a cob of corn, put it in a bag, said he was going to eat it at home. His wife was probably going to cook it. Ayman used that as an opening, started talking to him. And the man, being friendly, opened up. He said, "You know, I used to live in Sweden. I just came back. I hold Swedish citizenship, but I'm Moroccan by blood. I got tired of living abroad. I was over there for years, working, grinding." And just like that, Ayman knew exactly who this man was. Rich, Swedish Moroccan, had a fancy villa, and he lived there alone, based on what the man had told him, without even realizing what he was giving away. Ayman figured out where he lived. He was an older man, late 60s. Ayman said to himself, "This is my first target." He went and bought a tool, a screwdriver, and a knife. That was all he needed. He went to the house at night. There was an outer wall and then the front door of the house itself. The door was locked. The windows were shut tight. So how do you get a man to open his own door for you in the middle of the night? Ayman came up with something. He started making strange sounds outside. Animal sounds, mimicking them. The man heard something coming from his yard, from the garden, and he opened the door to see what it was. He stepped out, looked around, didn't see anything. And then Ayman came from behind him and stabbed him. He kept hitting him, kept going until the man collapsed to the ground. He was gone. Allah Yarahamu. Ayman walked into the house, calm, completely calm, because this was always part of the plan. He knew he had to kill the owner first. That way he could take his time, go through everything at his own pace. No rush, no one else there, nobody to stop him. And he found everything. Cash, lots of it. Jewelry, expensive watches, rings, dollars, other currencies, more than he ever made in his life. He spent the entire night, from nighttime until Fajr, going through the house, collecting everything he could. Then he walked out through the front door, stepped past the body of the Swedish-Moroccan man lying there by the gate, locked up behind him, and disappeared into the night like nothing had happened. 1 day passed, 2, 3, 4, until finally, someone discovered the murder. A man living alone in his home, found dead. The body was inside, right next to the gate. Investigations began. Fingerprints were lifted. They searched, they worked, but they came up empty. Nothing that pointed to Eamon, the corn seller. Nobody looked at him twice. He was just some kid standing on the street, selling corn, watching everything unfold. The neighbors panicking, the security forces arriving, the body being carried out. And he just stood there, selling corn, like nothing in the world had happened. Days went by, weeks passed, and Eamon started to feel a rush, a high. He thought to himself, I'm not stopping, summer's not over yet. So, he made a list. He went back through everyone he'd been watching from his corn cart, and he picked 5 targets, all of them older, all of them wealthy, all of them living in villas. One of them, the first on his new list, was a colonel, a senior officer in Morocco's Royal Armed Forces. Eamon had spotted him the same way he spotted the first victim. The man had bought corn from him, and Eamon, being Eamon, had done his homework, watched his comings and goings, figured out he lived alone, scoped out his house. He went to the colonel's home. Same plan, same method. He made strange noises outside to draw the man out, but here's where things went differently. The colonel was not your average old man. Yes, he was retired. Yes, he was getting up there in age. But this man was physically fit. He'd kept himself sharp, a military man through and through. And when he heard the sound and opened the door, he didn't just stand there confused. He saw Eamon, and he fought back. Now Eamon was 17, young, full of energy. But the colonel was no pushover. What happened next was a real struggle. The two of them went at it, hand to hand, right there at the entrance. But Eamon had come prepared. He pulled out his knife and stabbed the colonel in the stomach. It should have been over. But Eamon didn't pull the knife back out. He left it in there, and he started twisting it. The colonel, even in that state, even dying, grabbed onto Eamon, held him, and Eamon pulled the knife out and plunged it back in and kept going, until the colonel finally went still. Allah yarhamu. But the fight had cost Eamon something. The struggle, the noise. It had been loud, and the colonel, in those final moments, had been screaming, banging on the outer gate, trying to get someone's attention, trying to expose whoever was doing this to him. A neighbor heard it. A woman. She looked out her window and saw Eamon climbing over the wall, and she started screaming into the street. By pure chance, subhanallah, there was a military corporal passing by at that exact moment. His name was Abdul Latif. He'd been stationed at a border checkpoint for a while and had just come back to visit his family. And maybe, just maybe, Allah brought him back that night for a reason. The woman was screaming at him, "Look! That one up on the wall! He was inside the house! We heard him!" The moment Abdul Latif looked and saw Eamon on top of that wall. Eamon jumped down and ran. Abdul-Latif ran after him. Ayman bolted in the direction of a car wash nearby, packed with young guys hanging around outside, and Abdul-Latif was right behind him, shouting, "That's a criminal! That's a criminal! Thief! Thief! He's a criminal!" Every single one of those guys grabbed a rock off the ground and chased him. They were all throwing rocks at Ayman. One of them connected, hit him right in the head. Ayman went down, in the middle of the street. They held him there until the emergency patrol arrived and took him to the police station. The officer on the scene took one look at the situation, and he already had a feeling, because the murder of the Swedish-Moroccan man had already been in his files. And it had happened close to the colonel's neighborhood, and the corn seller used to work that exact same area. So before they even booked him, the officer said, "First, take me to where you're staying." They went to Ayman's room, and there it all was. Every single stolen item that had been reported missing from the Swedish-Moroccan's home. Ayman confessed. Right there. He admitted he'd stolen it from the first house. Said he hadn't gotten to the colonel in time. The colonel had made too much noise and he'd had to flee before he could steal anything. And then they found the list. 5 names, 5 targets. The colonel was number 2. After him, a pharmacist, then others. He had planned all 5 of them out. He had committed multiple murders against wealthy people and intended to work through his entire list. The people of Tarnat called him the Butcher of Tarnat, and the shock of it, the rage, consumed the entire city, especially the families of the victims. When Ayman finally went to trial, it came out that he was 17 years old and 7 months at the time of the crimes. And under the law, the maximum sentence allowed for a minor was 15 years in prison. 15 years! I've heard, and I'm not entirely sure which country, but I believe it was Egypt that revised the law around punishing juvenile offenders. Before, a minor could not be sentenced to death or to life in prison. That law was apparently amended. We'll cover that story in its own episode, inshallah, because it's a long one. As for Ayman, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. And that is where our story ends.